Today is a 3-show day, which means a couple things. One, it means that I will be doing 6 acts in a relatively short span of time, but it also means that I will have a lot of downtime between shows, and I would really like to be doing some knitting in that downtime. And we're gonna use this to measure and see where I am gauge-wise, and that should hopefully help determine which way I'm gonna move forward on this pattern. All right, so we're heading out later today, hitting yet another city, more fun places to explore. I think we are heading to Detroit, but it is a little bit of a later bus call, so I have time this morning to sit down and chat. So I thought I would pull out my jumpsuit, repair the buttons on this while I answered some of your questions. And first of all, I just wanted to say I've been getting a lot of love and appreciation in the comments for this jumpsuit, which has been featuring rather heavily in this Vlogmas series. And if you've been here a while, you will know about the backstory of this jumper, how it took me several months to hunt down all of the different towels that went into making it. Very fun video. If you haven't seen it, I will be sure to link it up here and then in the description as well, so you can check it out if you are so inclined. But just wanted to say thank you to everybody for the love on the jumpsuit. Some of you were slightly surprised or heartwarmed to see me wearing it, and I have to say I actually wear it all the time. Pretty much any cold weather contract I am wearing this. You guys don't see it very often unless you're a Patreon or a Coffee member. Then you will have seen this make an appearance last year in the vlog from last year's Christmas contract, because I was wearing it all the time on that contract. It was freezing in that tent. So very practical, and I've used it so much that the buttons are now in need of a little bit of tightening. So I think I'm just gonna go through and redo pretty much all of the buttons so that I don't lose one. And while I do that, I'll be answering some of your questions. So the first question that I've been getting the most is by far, where is Canal? What does she do while you're on tour, and who is watching her? And first of all, I have to say that generally she always comes with us. This is actually the first time that she hasn't come with us on a tour of this length. So she's been to Switzerland, to Italy, to Germany and Denmark with us. She's usually always with us unless we're doing a very short contract where it's just not worth it for us to bring her. So like we did a week in Singapore, she definitely did not need to come along for that. She is with her grandparents and enjoying some socializing with their dog as well, some bonding time. So that's been good for her, but we are very much missing her. And since I am missing her, I'm missing the snow, and y'all are also missing the corgi content, I thought, let's just enjoy a little winter wonderland adventure from last year's Christmas contract. Now that we've gotten our puppy friskies out, let's shake the snow off our boots and return to a much more temperate Charleston for yet another question. Someone asked a very intriguing question, I thought, and that was, how big or small is the circus world, and how often do you work with the same people repeatedly on different contracts? And it's kind of a complicated question, but it's so fascinating. So I would say that there are different sub-genres or categories of circus work. You have people who do the European cabaret dinner theater circuit. You have the traditional American circus side of things. You have the more modern American circus circuit. And then you also have people who do almost exclusively one-off gigs, corporate events, halftime shows, that sort of thing. And so the answer is that if you are working, at least in my experience, if you're working in a different sub-genre of circus than I am, our paths might cross once. We'll stay aware of what each other is doing, but the chances of working on the same contract a second time is much lower than if you are in the same type of category of circus work as I am. So we tend to do mostly the European dinner theater circuit. And in that case, we do cross paths and work with the same people a few times. It's not unusual, but it's also not so small that like we're all always working together. There are a lot of artists out there, and I don't think I've ever worked with anyone more than a couple times in different contracts. And I think that's pretty a common experience. Like, it's hard for me to say exactly because obviously like I don't do like the traditional American circuit, like three-ring circus, ringling, that sort of thing. So their experiences might be very different. But I will say that it has led, in my experience, to a very lovely phenomenon where circus artists are often very open to making friends and making friends quickly because we live a rather nomadic life. We have these short but occasionally quite intense contracts where everybody is like living together and people form friendships really quickly. But then we also are aware that we're gonna go off and do other contracts, and it might be years before we see these same people, these same artists again. So it's really not unusual to make friends on a contract, not see them again for years, and then get a message out of the blue from somebody being like, hey, I'm in your city for a day or two. Do you want to hang out? Can we grab coffee? Are you doing a show? Can I come see it? So I do feel like that's led to this really beautiful phenomenon where we have this widespread network of friends across the world that we don't see very frequently, but that we have no qualms about picking that friendship up again immediately, even if it's been years and years since we've seen them. So to answer your question, the circus world is quite small, but also it's much larger than you think, and we don't tend to work with the same people so often, maybe a few times over the span of, a career. Hello friends, I'm in lovely Detroit. It is quite early and today is a 3-show day, which means a couple things. One, it means that I will be doing 6 acts in a relatively short span of time and I'm going to be kind of tired by the end of today, but it also means that I will have a lot of downtime between shows and I would really like to be doing some knitting in that downtime. But if you remember from the last knitting update, I have a bit of a quandary. It turns out I have the wrong yarn, a dilemma, if you will, because I actually chose the wrong yarn for the pattern. So while I was originally going to do that lovely ribbed jumper, the Aurora pattern, I have potentially the wrong yarn for it, and I'm either going to need a lot more of that yarn or I'm not sure what to do with that exactly. But then, if we also remember, I did switch gears kind of impromptu on the bus and knit up this other sample wool, the economy jumper in the gray wool, and that could also be an option to continue with that pattern. So I need to decide what I'm gonna do. Am I gonna go with the original Aurora ribbed pattern or the economy jumper? And to that end, I have done a very responsible thing and knit up a gauge swatch. And I was even so responsible that I did properly block it using potentially some questionable techniques in the hotel room. It is now properly blocked, and I also have this that I brought with me, not anticipating that I was going to actually use it, but I do have it, and we're going to use this to measure and see where I am gauge-wise, and that should hopefully help determine which way I'm going to move forward on this pattern, with the original Aurora one or the economy jumper. Maybe an unusual technique to count stitches, but I find my eyes just get all mixed up and I lose track of where I am pretty easily. But just sort of leapfrogging these two pins really helps me count without getting mixed up to where I am in the pattern. So tickle me shocked, but I'm actually really close to having the ideal gauge based off of my measurements. So this swatch here has 21 stitches and 29 to 30 rows. I was having a little bit of a hard time measuring my rows, even with the little needles to help me, but the ideal gauge should then be 23 stitches and 30 rows. So honestly, that's really good. Like, that's super close. So I think what the game plan is, because I do love the colors and I do love like the original idea I had for this jumper. So I'm gonna continue on with this yarn and these needles, and it's just gonna mean that I need more yarn. But I'm not entirely sure how much yarn, and I also don't know where I'm gonna get it yet, because it is kind of tricky to get this yarn in the States. So I'm gonna continue on a little bit further with my pattern. I have marked how far the first ball of yarn got me, and as I continue to knit a little bit more, once I run out of the second ball of blue, I will also mark where that is, and hopefully by that point I'll be able to determine how much more yarn I'll need, and then I can look into where I'm gonna get that yarn, how I'm gonna get it, and how many more balls I'm gonna need. Hi.
Hi, gotta go.
Gotta go, bye.
I have a show to do.
Yeah. Really quick before we go into the theater and start the show, I did want to make a little note because I've been getting some absolutely lovely comments and offers from various people wanting to buy me yarn to finish the sweater. And as you can see now, I will not be switching yarns. I will be using the yarn that I currently have. I just will be needing a bit more of it. Although I do admit it would be fun to knit the sweater in the intended wool and just do a compare and contrast. But first things first, let me just finish this version as it is. But what I wanted to say was those are incredibly generous and kind offers, but you do not need to buy me yarn. If you really would like to, you can do so virtually on my Ko-fi account. It's like a website similar to Patreon, except that you can leave one-time tips. You don't have to sign up for monthly memberships. So if you are absolutely dying to buy me some virtual yarn, you can head on over there and leave me a little tip, but also please, zero obligations. The whole point of this Vlogmas series was to avoid the sort of commercialization and feeling pressured to spend money on all the things that are out there. So really, Don't worry about it, only do it if it's something that you're super passionate about and you are in a position financially to do it without, causing stress on your budget. So with that said and off my shoulders, let's get into the theater and do a show. This theater was absolutely stunning in its opulence. Built in 1927 with a blend of Eastern motifs that are heavily reminiscent of a Jumanji board, and with the capacity to seat over 5,000 people, this camera just isn't doing it justice. Just the lobby alone is mind-boggling in its level of detail. Clearly, no expense was spared in its construction. If you thought the signature wall on the previous theater was something, it doesn't hold a candle to the art here. Every last inch is covered in signatures and images of past productions, including, but not limited to, the 8-story stairwell. The theater is also known as the Temple of Amusement and has hosted artists from Shirley Temple to Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra to Bruce Springsteen. Now, between shows on 2 and 3 show days, a meal is catered by the company and usually involves vegetables, protein, and carbs. And after eating, I decided to go upstairs to digest with some knitting. Unfortunately, I had left both my curved cable needle and my double-pointed needle at the hotel, so I had to finish up the last several cable rows of the sweater with a normal needle, which fortunately I happened to have a third needle of the same size laying around, and it was a bit slower and definitely more finicky, but it got the job done, and also it's not like I'm in any sort of rush. And what does one do after a 3-show day? Well, ice skating, of course. So, quick knitting update, and I apologize if there's a lot of background noise. The AC unit is right underneath us here, but also this is the only place in the entire room that gets any light. So I'm gonna do my best to edit the audio, but if there's a little hum in the background, I'm very sorry. So taking a look at what I got done yesterday, it is quite a lot because look at this. A lot of progress has been made. So we can see that I finished the entire cable section and then continued on to the rib section up above. And if we look on this side, we can see I have all the markers here. So this is how far the first ball got me. This is how far the second ball of yarn got me. And now I'm on my third ball here. Still have quite a lot of it left, but I stopped for 2 reasons. One, because I ran out of time, but also because I need to stop when it measures 11 inches, and it is kind of approaching 11 inches, but I also didn't have a ruler on hand. So I took a pause there. I'm gonna measure it now and see how many more rows I need to do until we do hit that 11-inch mark. And then I'm also gonna be able to know how much more yarn I'm going to need. And thankfully, my roommate back in Montreal has agreed to go help me out and go grab some more yarn from the original store where I got this, because drops is really hard to buy in the US, especially when you don't have a stable mailing address. We're only in hotels for maximum 2 days each now, basically until we hit Philadelphia. Philadelphia, so I'm not entirely sure that it's going to be reliable to ship more of this yarn. So I think I'm going to have my roommate pick me up some more. I should have enough to finish the front of the sweater and possibly also the sleeves while I'm here on tour, and then probably just have to finish it in Montreal unless I can manage to get some yarn shipped to me in Philadelphia. So that's where we're at. I'm super pleased with it. It's looking very, very cute, and now the next step for this is just going to be to get a ruler and measure it out, and once I hit 11 inches we're gonna switch to our secondary color, and I'm very excited to see how that's going to look once it's like actually knitted into the primary color. So as it turns out, Detroit was so jam-packed that we're actually gonna have to spend part of the next episode here as well, continuing to explore the city and that gorgeous theater, catching up on the book that I picked out back in Savannah, and making some progress on all of my various sewing projects. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Plus, there was also a wild ride of a costume mishap that was absolutely hilarious and that I'm convinced you're gonna love as well. So be sure to tune in next week to hear all the lovely details on that as well. Everyone had some lovely suggestions in the comment section about the design choices for the chicken scratch embroidery and the apron I'll be using it on, so thank you so much for that. I have to say that the vast majority of comments so far are also leaning towards a more pinafore bib style apron, and I've also even gotten some really fun pattern suggestions to use on that, so thank you so much. I know I'm struggling to keep up with responding on all of the comments, but I am absolutely reading them all, so keep them coming. I am really enjoying them, as well as all the feedback and the suggestions, tips, tricks, all of that fun stuff. Thank you so much. I also wanted to add that I don't want anybody to feel like they have to watch all of these Vlogmases as they're coming out. If you are feeling like there's just too much to be done this holiday season, I know it can be a very busy time of the year. Feel free to watch them at your own pace, like well after the holidays, if that is what works for you. I don't think that they're too overtly Christmas in nature that they would be unenjoyable to watch after the holidays have already passed. So if you're feeling pressured or stressed to like keep up with them, don't worry about it. It's the internet. They'll be out there forever waiting for you when you are ready to watch them. So thank you so much for hanging out with me again today, and I will catch you in the next episode back here in Detroit. Bye!